Thank you for being on here today. I'll go ahead and get started. A couple of things. Number one, I hope you have the greatest holiday ever this week. I hope that you have an incredible second part of December. Wish you and your family and your loved ones all the very, very best. I want to make sure that we're really clear on here. This is wide open for just Q&A. There's no class, there's no PowerPoint, there's no list of 18 things to make sure that we cover. It's just open. And so we can do a Q&A, we can talk. The only structure that I asked to be around it is that we are going to focus on compensation model as well. And I've got a couple of my friends who run some of the biggest and best expansion teams. By no means is it an exhaustive list of all those teams. It's just a few of them that are going to pop on today and share how their team does compensation. And the idea behind it is we all get to learn from each other. And so as you're building out an expansion business, as you're looking at what you do with an expansion business, what have we learned as far as comp? What are the different models? What are the different ways of doing it? I'll tell you that as unique as they all are, as we all grow and as we get bigger and bigger and bigger, they tend to do more of this. They tend to get more alike instead of disalike. There's just a different way of getting there. And we want you to know that it's okay. It's okay that yours looks unique. The other thing about compensation would be this. Whatever comp model you set, you are not stuck with it. Here's some easy rule of thumb, just bullet points that I wrote out. Number one, have an end date. So what we do in my group is we write them for 1 year at a time, meaning if something needs to change or something needs to look different, it's not evergreen. In other words, I don't want to get stuck with someone that, let's say I'm doing business. Well, I'll give an exact example. The way that we were doing compensation in my group, like in 2010, 2011, and 2012, it didn't work at scale. By the time I got to 2014 and 2015, we looked down and we went, oh my gosh, we need to change this in our model. The problem was I had hired these expansion agents and I told them this was our deal. So it was really hard to wheel it back. It felt impossible to wheel it back. And I was like, shoot. And so we kind of grandfathered them in and said, okay, we're never going to change this. And over the next few years, we were like, okay, what could we do to basically buy that back? And I'll give you a perfect example. In my group was at the time in 2010, we were paying all of their market center bills. No matter what city they were in, we paid every bill they had at the market center. We paid their MLS dues. We paid their office rent if they wanted it. We paid literally everything, which isn't a bad idea. Like that's fine. Other big expansions do that. Nothing wrong with it. At the scale that we were moving by 2014, 2015, that didn't work anymore. But it was really hard to go back and say, hey, I'm going to, takeaways are hard, right? And so we left that and just grandfathered it in. So what we learned and what we've been doing since 2015, 2016 is when we do a comp model, we clearly say after 1 year, we may have to revisit this. After 1 year, there might be something that we don't know. And we tell our agents and our partners, we have no intention of changing this. We don't want to, but we don't know the future. And we don't know what it looks like 12 months from now or 18 months from now. And so we're really clear. It just gives us kind of that trigger point. Our agreements in my group, they run for 1 year at a time. Some do 2 years, some do 3 years. It's okay. Like you got to figure out what's the best practice for you. You might even decide that the comp model in your hub versus your expansion areas might look different. Some of my friends do that. I do that. My hub in Portland looks different than my expansion partners across the country. And that works really well for me. You might choose to do it that way. Nothing wrong with that. All right. So before I have some of our friends share comp models, is there anything you want to put in the chat that you want me to make sure that we cover? Just want to make sure that we're open. There's no question that we won't answer. There's no dialogue that we're unwilling to have. Is there anything that you want to make sure that we cover today? You can either come off mute and say it. There's only 30 of us on here, or you can put it in the chat. Either one's totally fine. What are the minimum requirements for a team to expand? Minimum requirements, the only way I could answer this would be like guardrails of KWin, the expansion network. So number one, they've got to have an agent in at least one other market center. Number two, they've got to attend ESO. By the way, Lacey, can you drop the ESO dates that we have in here for January? We have ESO Live that'll be in the Carolinas in January, like early January. And then we have ESO in New Orleans, the end of January. And so if you wanted to go to one of the live ESOs, you can pop into either one of those. Just need you to register in advance because of local COVID rules and how many seats and all the stuff and things that we have to keep track of now. But if you want to come to either one of those, and I would encourage you, take it in a different state than where you live. Like if you live in Washington, it would make a lot of sense to take ESO in the Gulf states, and you're the one person in the room from Washington, and you meet all those agents, and you know what that means. There's always referral opportunity from that. So agents in an additional market center, take an ESO, an ICA, an independent contractor agreement, which comp model is part of that, an independent contractor agreement between the agent, the partner, and the expansion business, the hub, if you will, that says at least 25% of the commission gets shared back. Most expansion teams are closer to 50-50 or 60-40 or somewhere in that neighborhood. I don't know anybody who is 75-25. 25 being to the expansion company, 75 going to the agent. However, that would be our minimum to be in the Keller Williams expansion network. Don't know if that answered the question on what are the minimum requirements for a team to expand. Otherwise, we don't have any, there's no rules. There's no rule that says a team has to do this much volume to go into expansion or has to do this much commission to go into this, go into expansion. We don't have that. Addressing profit share with admin staff with guardrails so as to make it sustainable. Deborah, what do you mean by that?
As we grow and we continue to add agents, we want to reward our director of ops and the admin staff for the increase in business that they're allowing us to do by providing value. But I want to build a model that we can sustain over time where we're not overpaying for that, but not underpaying for it either.
And you're talking profit share at the expansion business level, not profit share at the Keller Williams International level. Is that right?
Correct.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Every time I see profit share, I've got to ask, like, is that Keller Williams profit share or team profit share? And what you're talking about would be called team profit share. Yes.
Correct.
Okay. Couple of things around that. Couple of best practices. Number one, this is something, be really careful about making it evergreen. In other words, be really careful that you don't end up with something that becomes a takeaway later. And there's nothing wrong. Gary, whenever this comes up in Gary's like private mastermind, he'll say two things. He'll say, one, I put a model in the MREA book that still works today for profit share at the team level. He said, number two, don't be afraid to set a number that says once the company has made X amount in profit, we profit share above that number. He said, there's nothing wrong with saying the company should make 200 grand in profit, 500 grand in profit, $1 million in profit, whatever the number is that's appropriate for the business. And then say, we're going to profit share every dollar after that, or we're going to profit share X% of every dollar after that. There's nothing wrong with saying the company should make X first. So don't make it evergreen. Don't put it in such a way that you could never change it later. And a good example of that would be profit share at Keller Williams International. Like when we came up with, when they came up with profit share in the mid 1980s, they vested it at 3 years and said, once you spend 3 years at the company, we're never going to take it away. But in the mid 1980s, nobody thought about an agent someday going to a competing company down the road and literally competing head to head with their Keller Williams office that they were vested at. Nobody thought of that. And then, of course, you get to 2017, 2014, 2020, and it happens. And we go, shoot, I'm not sure that that would have been in the spirit of profit share. And so then you put together a task force to go back and figure out, how do we undo that? What does it look like? How do you make it fair? And so that's why we say, don't make those things evergreen. Evergreen's tough. Like things that you can't change, that's tough. Don't know if that answers your question or not, but thank you for asking it. Volume was a question. Awesome. Very good. DC, Maryland, Virginia, South Florida expansion. I never received the ICA from the last mastermind. We've sent that out a couple times. Yes. I've had a handful say I never got it, and we've sent it 2 or 3 times to everybody who was registered. And so should we send it? What should we do if they didn't get it?
Bottom bullet point, the drive link, and it's in there.
In that last email? Okay, so in the last email that we sent you, bottom bullet point, there's a link to a Google Drive that shares with you. I think was it just mine?
It's ICA and then like a template from RI.
Right. So it's just a template for an independent contractor agreement. So we've sent it. You do have it. Thank you for asking. Can you also put, Lacey, a list of the states? I posted it in Facebook the other day that we're licensed in. Like, it's worth saying that again and again and again. And for us, licensing and bringing in agents are 2 different things. We're licensed in Texas, and we have a handful of agents in Texas, and we're licensed in Ohio, and we're bringing in our very first expansion agents in Ohio. We're licensed in maybe a dozen states total, but we're not in any rush. What we're doing right now is we're finding like one team in each state as we get licensed, and we go deep with that one team to go, hey, what are all the challenges we need to solve in this state? Being licensed just means that we can do business. It doesn't mean that we know everything we need to know to do business. And so we're taking it very slow, state by state by state. Yeah, thank you. So there's a state list that we're licensed in. And so if you've got an expansion agent or expansion business in one of these states, and you want to be put like on our list of, we basically run like a list of 10 people at a time, because that's how much bandwidth we have in our staff of, okay, let's put 10 on here, go solve their challenges, and then we can add 10 more. If you see a state that you're in that you want to be added to the list, please just email me. We don't have a cooler or higher speed system than that. Please just email me, and we can have a conversation and go from there. All right, cool. Let's go to some comp models. Can we do, let's see, Eric, are you on and live? Are you on?
Yep, I'm here.
Perfect. Awesome. Awesome. And Bob Lucido, are you on?
Yes, I'm on. Thank you. Thank you, Cody.
Awesome. I see Bob. And then also my man, Jose from Jose Medina and Associates. Jose, are you on?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Ah, perfect. All right. Lacey, am I missing anybody who's on yet? Okay, perfect. So here's what I did. These guys, Livian, Lucido, and Medina and Associates are all going to share with you. I didn't ask them to like build out a class. They're just going to share with you right from them, like, how does their comp model work? They're going to share with you what it looks like right now. And they're going to share with you if it's appropriate, like, hey, I mean, Bob's been doing expansion since expansion began almost. And Bob might say, listen, in 2012, we did this and we learned that we had to change it. Like at 2016, we went, shoot, let's do it this way or that way. They're going to share with you some of the things they've learned along the way. I've asked each one to give us just kind of an overview, kind of a 10,000 foot level view, if you will, like a 3-minute or 5-minute overview. But if you have specific questions for their model, each of them are totally willing to help. Each of them would totally share with you and just go, hey, here's a copy, or here's what we do. This is all, I mean, because we've all done that. We've all grown up the same way. So each have been gracious enough to show up, and each are gracious enough to share it. So Mr. Lucido, can we start with your group?
Sure. So tell me the specific question you'd like me to address, Cody.
Tell us if I called you off the street and said, oh my gosh, I've always looked at your group, I'd love to be a part of it. Tell me the math, like how does the compensation work if I were an expansion agent in your business?
Okay, well, thank you for asking. First off, Cody, thanks for all you're doing for expansion. Thanks for everybody being on this call. Shows your desire to want to grow and expand your company. We started expansion. We were one of the early pioneers with it. I guess we made a lot of mistakes. So hopefully this will help you all to not make the similar mistakes. We went in business with some really good people. First off, we focus on our value proposition. We believe we have one of the strongest value propositions on the planet. And I encourage you all to do that too, to make sure that what you have is what people want, that they are attracted to you and that you add real value to the partnership. That's critical. That's number one. Before you can have any type of compensation program, you have to really hone in on your value proposition. What is it? What is going to make you stand out from anyone else? Number two, we went into business with some really nice people, but they were the wrong people. We were in 27 cities in 6 months. We were excited, but we realized we needed to cut back. We cut back to about 13 cities, but went in business with the people that our goals were aligned, and they came with some volume, $15 to $20 million. It could be one or two people, but we found that the larger partners, like we just, I think, just have had one of the largest mergers in the history of Keller Williams with the Edie Waters Network. Theirs is 152 million. It'll probably do 200 million this year. And we dated with her for 2.5 to 3 years to get the partnership right, to make sure we had the right value proposition and the right compensation program. So I'll say this to everybody: all of our compensation programs, one size does not fit all. They are customized per program, per partnership. At our headquarters, we have a expense share, a profit share, expense share and profit share model. We have a tiered model system ranging from a 40% commission to the salespeople to up to 100% at our headquarters. We know that some of the early on expansion teams had these very low commission programs. That's just a ticket for people to leave your program. I don't want people to leave our partnership. I want people to want to be committed to life and want to continue on. And we got to make it profitable for our agents. And then being on a very small 35 or 40% commission program, we found that was not a successful plan. And quite frankly, I wouldn't do it.
So the lowest you have right now, like in the hub, is 40% share to the partner, up to 100% share to the partner.
Yes, on our team leads, which is a whole nother, we were late to the ISA program. So we went out and hired the top ISA in the country for Redfin. Sean leads our program. We now have an incredible ISA team, but it's all about quality. It's not about the number of quantity of leads, because a cheap lead is a cheap lead. And if it doesn't convert, we're into high quality leads. And we have a very, very strong ISA program and lead generation program for our team members. So if we generate at the headquarters, this is in Maryland. Now around the country, it's different, but in the headquarters, it's appointment ready. They go on it. It's a 40%. That's on our company generated business. Just in the headquarters. Around the globe and in Canada, we are on a profit share model, and our programs vary. So if you want to discuss it further with me, please contact me at ask at lucidoglobal.com. So we're at headquarters, they can go up to 100%. And then at the end of the year, it goes back to their program, which is a 75-80 model for our top producers for their leads. Gary told me, I was a little frustrated a couple of years ago, and I went out and met with Gary, just my wife and I and our COO, and we met with Gary, and for 4 hours reinvented our program. He said, Bob, people don't want to pay you a lot for their business. So why not reward them? Pay them 90 to 100%. But on your leads is where you should make the money. And that we have a blended model where people are dependent on us, but not totally dependent. We want to help them with growing their ISA program, with growing their own database. So hopefully it's a third of our business, third of the leads from us, and 2/3 from their system. So we have a hybrid at the headquarters, where our leads are at 40%, high quality appointment ready leads. And then their business starts at 75-80. Once they pay us a certain amount, company dollar, on their business, not on the team lead business, during a 12-month period, for the rest of that year, they're at 100%. And we take out a processing fee to cover photography, brochures, and some administrative.
Like a small administrative share, if you will.
Heavily incentivize them to grow their business, and reward them for it. Because in our market, I'm sure it's the same with you, but I think we have the fiercest competition on the planet, right where we are right here. I compete with some of the number 2 and number 3 agents in the world. I'm still in production, and we have a lot of
Maryland is tough.
A lot of 100% models here. So we have to one, focus on our value proposition. I'll encourage you all to do the same. Number 2, at the headquarters, we have a hybrid model, strong leads, and then strongly rewarded for their program, for their leads. Outside of Maryland, in a couple locations, we have a cap model. But most of our expansion teams, we're on an expense and profit share model where they own the business with us, they share in the profits, and it's heavily rewarded for the upside.
So in synopsis, what I'm hearing you say is that you're one of the expansionists who has a comp model that does this. If it's the agent's lead or if it's the team's lead or business's lead, is that right?
Yes and no. In the headquarters,
it
is that way.
In the hub, yeah. Thank you for differentiating. So back at the hub, if I'm on your team, if it's my uncle who's buying a house and that's like totally my lead, I might have $1 share with you. And if it's from the Lucido group directly, I might have a different dollar share with you. Is that right?
You're 100% right. That's at headquarters. Now on our expansion partners, and we're in 46 cities and in 2 countries and growing. And we sit down with each team individually, and we work out what are our common goals, what is the best way to get there, and we heavily reward production and profit.
Okay, perfect. So it's different in those 46 cities. There's probably some overlap or similarities, but you go real deep with that partner and go, what do we need to do to make this work with this business model? Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly. And at the hub, at the headquarters, we don't use hub anymore. Headquarters, we're looking at that model and bringing it out into the expansion world to heavily reward people to work their database and for us to make our profit on our leads.
My last question, and then we'll go to Jose next. My last question, if I'm in the hub, because I mean, I've done this as my own business before too. If I'm in the hub and there's ever a question on whose lead was it, if that ever comes in, I mean, it happens, right? What happens there? Like, what do you do when Agent Joe says, this is my lead, and you go, well, that's really weird because we literally sent this to you. Like, what do you do with that? Because it's, what do you do?
I like to say that we're a team that has failed greatly in the beginning. That's where I'm so excited about what we're doing right now, Cody, because we have really mastered in our systems and processes. We didn't have an ISA team 3 years ago. Now we have 8 and growing, but more importantly, it is a strong program with high quality leads. Our processes before, we would give leads. I can't believe we went from $250 million to $850 million 3 years ago. We were at $850 million. We didn't have an ISA program, and we were giving leads around this. I'd call people going down the street or call agents, say, hey, call Joe and give him a phone number. We had no tracking system. We weren't as systemized as we are right now. Right now, we thanks in part due to our new CEO, Jack Mazza, who's actually my brother-in-law. He's from the corporate world. Everything we do is measured. Everything we do is quantified. So every lead goes through our lead system without fail. I don't care if it's my cousin and I'm giving it out. That goes through our lead system. They quantify it, email goes out, and it is fully connected, and we have paper trails. So right now I would say we've never had a lead issue clarification issue since we started this program 2-3 years ago.
Perfect. I love hearing that. Jose, I'm going to go to you next. Bob, anything that you or your group wants to put in the chat, perfectly acceptable. Like if there's a detail, or I don't know about you, but every time I present something, I always think like 8 minutes later, oh yeah, there's this one thing, or oh yeah, there's this one detail. We're an easy group. If you've got something, you're like, oh yeah, we do this or this. This is all in the spirit of helping somebody else to maybe not make the exact same mistakes that we made. Like,
great point. Let me say this one thing, if I can, Cody, and I will do that, but I want to share with everybody here, because you're either considering growing your expansion team or partnering with somebody. And I would just say this: I believe the world of real estate is that teams are growing and expanding, and partnering together, I think, is the key to success, number one. And number two, every model is different. So there's not a one size fits all here. We're in conversations with some very, very large teams right now. And we are sitting down and going through what is important to them. How can we help them achieve their goals within the structure of what makes sense for both of us to create a true win-win. And I think through collaboration and sitting down, if you have the value proposition and you like each other, that working out the compensation model can work, because we both have the long-term goal of never splitting up and both of us achieving our long-term financial goals together. Thank you.
So well said, Bob. Thank you. Always a gentleman. Thank you. If you would, Bob, would you drop your email address again in the chat box? I know you gave it, but if anyone's like me, I forgot to write it.
Sure.
Jose, can you give us an overview? What does the comp model look like in your business? What have you learned? What do you do different now than you used to? What are you maybe going to be doing? Like, tell us what it looks like.
Yeah, great. So again, Jose Medina, my headquarters is in Canton, Ohio. We have 4 different locations. We'll do about 1,400 transactions. I agree 100% with Bob with what he said with the value proposition. I think before you talk splits, the conversation about value has to happen, right? Because I can argue there's people out there that are giving away 80% and they're not their value proposition. They should be giving away more, actually. And so it has to start with value proposition. For us, we focus it on 3 key areas. We focused it on leads, leverage, and then leadership. That's the foundation of our value proposition. So depending on where you line up as far as what you're giving your agents, that's really kind of the first conversation of what you should be charging. So with us, we talk about leads. Is that our ISA department? Is it our database that we're working for them? Is it for sale by owners and expireds that we're working for them? With our leverage, what admin work are we taking off their plate with closings? What admin work are we taking off with listing photography, stuff like that? And then leadership is just the training aspect of it, right? Like, what are they getting from us with accountability and monthly one-on-ones and so forth? So I would encourage you, before you start to build out any of that, like, feel free to just whiteboard it out of what are you actually offering. And then from there, that probably is a good springboard for what you should be offering. So with us, we have a success platform, which basically they start at a 45%, where they're getting 45%. And that's when they're in their PC coaching. So they're meeting with the productivity coach daily to get.
Time out. Is the PC in the expansion business, or are you using the PC from the market center?
No, it's in our expansion business.
Okay. So you've got a PC in the Jose Medina group. And
Right.
if they're working with that person, they start at a 45 to the agent.
Correct. So the first 6 transactions they're there, but they're meeting with the PC daily to talk about lead generation, scripting, what they're doing on a daily basis. And there's very high accountability. So I'm an OP at a couple market centers. So I have a couple PCs and I know what that looks like. This looks like very, very high accountability. There's a roll call. You have to come with your numbers. There's just accountability around it. At a market center, you don't really have that level of accountability typically. So you start off at the 45. Once you move to 6 transactions, you're at 50%. So 50% to the agent, 50% to the team. And then we top out at a 60-40. Once you get to 36 transactions, then you're at a 60-40. But some of you may be saying, wow, that seems really light. Not only do we talk about splits, but there's a lot of other stuff that we throw into that compensation package, right? So a person who's doing 20 transactions has a lot more, outside of split, has a lot more value added to their compensation package outside of just the split, right? So they have revenue sharing. They get revenue sharing through the team. They get the extra good leads. So the referrals that I get go directly to our high producers that are.
Oh, hang on, they get the Glenn Gary, Glenn Ross leads.
Right.
They get the good. They get the good ones.
For the closers, right? We provide healthcare for people that are providing doing over 36 transactions. So they get enrolled healthcare. And then they get additional support and leverage around them. So they could be hiring a showing assistant. They could be having opportunities to buy into future locations, et cetera. So it's not just based on the percentage, right? Because I think we all want to get caught up on there, but how can we weight this So our top producers not only are getting a better split, but they're also getting a lot of more perks to the program as well.
So I start at 45. I work with the PC. After 6 deals, that changes. And then after 36 deals, you go unit count. After 36, I go 60-40 with you.
Correct. You are correct.
I'll take 60, you take 40. So deal 36 through 96, I'm keeping 60% of the money.
You're absolutely right.
Yep. And then you've got a value proposition that stacks with that makes that make sense.
Yeah, because as soon as someone gets to 60-40, they're going to be recruited by someone that's 80-20 or whatever the case is, right? So when they feel the need that they want to leave, they're not only leaving the split, yes, they're getting more in split, but they're leaving all of these other things. They're leaving their transaction coordinator, their leads,
sure. Yeah.
their healthcare, all of those things that they've built over those years.
Yep. Smart. Bia asked, how do you compensate your PC from the team?
They get the 5%. So that's just a straight offset of that 5% less than the 45 to 50%. That 5%
Yep.
goes to them.
Is Jose, is there any salary or is it just the 5% commish?
It's just 5% commish, but as we build this out, I mean, in the next, we feel like in the next 12 months, we'll be able to add 5 to 7 teams to this platform. And so you're training, you could be training 15 to 20 agents at a time. Sure. And that's going to lead to pretty good compensation. And she's still in active sales.
Yeah, that was my next question. Is it a player coach? Is it someone who's also still producing?
Yeah, it's a veteran agent that's been with me for 14 years. So she is still selling, but her purpose is to wind that down and really build up the PC program as she's doing that. So she's relevant. She's in the field daily. And it's been
14. Did you say 14 years?
She's been with me for 14 years. Yeah.
Like in a row?
Yeah, in a row.
Like no breaks, consecutive 14 years.
Yeah.
I just want everybody to hear that.
She's not even my longest standing buyer agent.
That's so good. Like that's in a world where we're used to these looking like a revolving door sometimes. And Gary's always the first to remind us, he's like, why is turnover bad? I just want to say, Jose, that's good, man. I mean, the fact that you have that makes me understand. I don't have a question. Do you have a value prop? You can't have somebody for 14 years and have that not even be your longest standing person without a value proposition. So I'm real clear there. Good for you. At the same time, I'm sure you've had somebody join your group that wasn't a fit and they stayed for 10 minutes.
Yep, absolutely.
Like that happens too. So for everybody listening, and this is obviously Christmas week, so this will be like replayed, and we're sharing this with almost 200 people that were registered. When you have someone join that doesn't stay, it's okay. Like it's okay. We've all been there. Jose, anything else that makes your value prop unique? I like that you start at one level and then it escalates up based on what they do. Anything else that you haven't said?
No, just to reiterate what Bob said, like you got to start before you put down any numbers. Like, what are you actually offering them? Like whiteboard it out, figure out what you're going to offer from there, and then build that wall of value. And then from there, you can talk about what split you're going to be giving to people. Perfect. Any questions for Jose? Drop them in the chat, or there's only 36 of us on here live. Feel free just to ask it. It's like we're all sitting in the same room. We're good. Anything for Jose?
Jose, sorry, another question. Hi. So your PC, I understand in production and everything. Are you also building your own coaching that you are able to serve others, or would that person just for your clients? Right. That is just for the agents that we partner with and the teams that we partner with. Yeah. So you wouldn't be taking that outside of Jose Medina right now. Yeah. So there's 3 levels of coaching that we provide for our team members, just depending on where they're at. There's the PC for the brand new agent. We've also partnered with MAPS, and we have an exclusive MAPS program that we offer to our regular sales agents, how to convert open houses, how to help with getting buyer agency agreements signed, stuff like that. And then we have for the MAPS for your agent. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then we have a leadership track, which is for our future leaders in our organization, developing them out, how to hold one-on-ones, just how to be a leader and lead with integrity and stuff. So that's through the MAPS program as well. And that's for anybody that we are in business with. Thank you. We are not asking any more of your questions unless you tell us where you got those great bookcases from. Oh, Amazon, they call spine.
Imagine that, Amazon, where all things come from. Good grief, man. Thank you. Jose, anything else that differentiates that you would say, is it always been this, or did you evolve to this?
We've evolved. We've had everything out there, and it's evolved, made every mistake that probably Bob has made as well. And we've evolved to this. The last thing that one of the questions in the chat was, what's the biggest value proposition? It sounds so cliche, but I'm still going to say it. It's the culture. It's who we are as integrity, as leaders. I think the biggest thing my people in my organization would say is that our world is big enough for them to have as big a world as they want, right? And so they don't feel like they need to go create their own. They don't feel like they can't accomplish what they want to accomplish. They can accomplish what they can accomplish within our organization as an entrepreneur, not an entrepreneur out there, right? So
yeah, good term. Good term. One last question, Jose. Who pays for like the database 36 touch mailings, or however many touches you're doing? Who pays for that?
Yeah, the team pays for it. And the teams that we partner with, it's a shared expense model that we do shared expenses and shared profit. So
got it. Okay, good. If anybody has direct questions for Jose, can you drop an email or phone number or whatever's appropriate? People could ask like directly, or for those who watch the recording from this, that they can contact you.
Yeah, I'll drop all that in the chat. If you guys have any questions, I still see a couple more coming in. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help.
Would you share your ICA agreement that you use?
Yeah, absolutely. We're open book. We've probably taken it from someone else at some point and adopted it. So yeah, I'll share anything. Yeah, and I can get that over to you, Cody.
If you don't take someone else's and adopt it, I think that's ridiculous. The only request we ever have, like the Lucidos, Medinas, and the Libyans of the world, the only request we ever have is if you take something we're using and you plus it, you better send it back to us. Like if you make the damn thing better, send it back and go, hey, I thought of this or I thought of that. That's our only request. You improve it, you send it back so that we can do the same. I mean, for us, R&D department stands for rip off and duplicate. Like that, there's nothing wrong with that. We should be doing that together. Jose, thank you. Will you drop your contact info in the chat for us?
Yep. Thanks, Cody.
Perfect. All right. And Libyan, Eric, can you tell us what the economic program looks like at Libyan? If it's evolved, if it's changed, what you guys learned as you did it, what does it look like?
Yeah, so I want to break it down really into like 4 different segments so we can kind of hit a wide array of attendees. And so first I want to look at like, what are our team owners, or what we call our CEOs? Those are like our partners on the ground who are leading the teams locally. Their compensation structure is they're partners with us, right? So they started a 50-50% split of the profit. Libyan covers all of their expenses and provides the support, the operations, the leadership, the training, everything that they would need in order to really have a business in a box. We provide them from a headquarters perspective, and then split profits 50-50. It then is results-based compensation from
Time out real quick. Time out, Eric. Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? Is it annually? What does it look like for, if I were to be that person for the group, how often do we split the money?
Yeah, so we do distributions every month. So we'll, Libyan HQ will cover all of the expenses and then reconcile at the middle of the month after the previous month has been closed out.
So kind of like a transmittal at a market center level.
Absolutely.
Got it. Makes sense.
And so that's compensation based, or I guess, really results based compensation, where it does tier after our local teams have become more and more profitable throughout the year. It can go all the way up to 65-35, depending on the levels and the tiers of results and profitability for our local teams. So we have our CEOs who have that compensation structure, and then we have our agents who are out, of course, working with buyers and sellers on a regular basis. Their compensation structure, we give a lot of latitude to our local leaders, to our CEOs and our business partners, to make decisions in the field, to put agents on compensation structures that are both in alignment for their profitability and in alignment for recruiting the best agents to the company. And so we, of course, typically advise them to do 50-50. And depending on market dynamics, some of them may be 40-60s, some of them may be 60-40s, but we typically advise the 50-50 comp model for the agents.
Do you have any structure difference like Mr. Lucido, where if it's a direct Libyan lead versus my cousin buying a house?
No, we do not. We have them. We do provide all of our teams with leads. However, we do not have any different compensation models, regardless of where the lead is originating from.
Pros and cons. I've done it both ways too, and each time I thought about the other way being better. Like I've never been happy. Like there's always, thank you for answering it. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're perfect. And so then we have our operations coordinators. And those would be like transaction coordinators, executive assistants, listing coordinators. Those are the actual heroes on the ground with our teams who really are keeping the wheels on and herding the cats. The operation coordinators are Libyan employees. So they're paid a salary with benefits and then profit share at the end of the year through Libyan.
And that's an annual profit share.
Correct.
Okay. Very good.
And then we have a coaching division as well. So we have our productivity coaching division, and then we have what amounts to be a somewhat merging and altering Libyan coaching division, which was formerly Adam Hergenrother coaching. It will become Libyan coaching, and there's a separate compensation model for those coaches. But we do provide coaching services for all of our agents and for our CEOs.
Do you have and I should have asked all three. So I will. Is there a minimum production that you look at that you go, if the person's below this production, we're probably not a fit? Do you have a production requirement?
Yeah, from an agent standpoint, really, we have no minimum production, of course. So some of our teams are, of course, growing with brand new agents and prefer new agents. I, for one, still run a team and am part of the leadership team with Libyan. I historically prefer agents who are brand new to the business, shape them and mold them, and build them to the best habits. And so we really don't intervene with what our CEOs prefer locally. However, what we have found in kind of evolving the model over time, and I look at it as that we're really a leadership-based platform. We're here to collaborate with local leaders and accelerate their growth in both personally and professionally. And so we found that typically leadership capacity is the lid on everyone's growth. And so what we're finding is that people who have a team that does, in that 100+ unit a year range is typically the best person for us to partner with from a leadership capacity standpoint. That averages around, $30 million in production annually.
And that's who you look for at like what you're calling the CEO level or like a local area leader level. But the associate joining the team, you're saying you don't have like a, hey, you had to sell 10 homes to get in kind of threshold.
Correct.
Did I say that right?
Local.
Okay, good. Is there anything else that that you would add around compensation model with Libyan that you would say is important for someone to know?
I think for us, we've opted towards simplicity and having that be streamlined. One, we really focus on profitability rather than on
day and have that recruiting style conversation that says, well, what do you net? But truly for us, we look at what is the net. And so we want our CEOs to be as profitable as humanly possible. And we want them to live and lead the best life possible. And that means we're really focused on making them more profitable. And so we're focused on how do we leverage services from them to make them more profitable. And so we find that we're right in line as a company across our 39 teams to be where Gary and Jay's MREA2 numbers have come in from an expansion perspective from profitability. So that's kind of our main focus is how do we keep an eye on that and make our people more profitable.
Good. Well said. Eric, can you drop contact info in the chat for you or whoever's appropriate for someone who's listening or will listen to the recording of, hey, what about this? Or I missed what you said here, or how did you guys do? I mean, this is all sharing. This is the culture of who we are. Is my friend Kristan Cole on? I know that you couldn't be on video because you're traveling, but are you on audio?
I am. I don't know if you can hear me very well, so
Yeah,
I'm
we can
outside.
hear you.
Kind of noisy.
Perfectly.
Okay, great.
We know that
Perfect.
we interrupted your vacation. Thank you. Can you give us an overview of what the Kristan Cole Network compensation model looks like? Anything you've learned along the way, something you did that you don't do now, or vice versa?
I think that what we do now that we didn't do before is keep it simple. We were so complex before, especially in terms of, compensation, depending on where the lead came from, et cetera, whether it was a buyer, whether it was a seller, that you can do that when you have 6 people on your team. You can't do it when you've got 200. It just became super complex. And so what we learned is we just needed to simplify. We actually now have a 4th tier. So we have 4 tiers, and that really came out of wanting to add more value as people became more engaged, more profitable, and just providing them such value that they would never want to leave us. So tier 4 would be somebody in the $25 to $60 million range. And that's kind of a new tier for us in terms of people in that range. And just at each additional tier, the compensation maxes out at 60%. However, the additional value changes as you go up in tiers in terms of, for instance, we have a sister company, a coaching and consulting company that consults businesses inside and outside of real estate. And
so hang on, I want to make
yeah.
sure that everybody heard that. So if I'm an agent in the company, I can get to a 60% dollar share, but there's some other door that gets unlocked of value that's beyond the 60% dollar share.
The dollar share doesn't change, Cody. The additional value, for instance, providing a one-on-one coaching for you,
Got it.
or consulting for you, or maybe now you and I decide to partner and go into another geographic area and spend specific money on it because you've proven that you're going to show up and do the work, etc. Does that make sense?
Yes, it totally does. And that's where I want everybody to hear that, because compensation isn't always dollars. Compensation
True.
isn't always split. It might be, hey, I'm going to unlock this door for you. Or you look down and you go, the role can't pay you anymore, but you've done it so well. Let me add this to the table. I think that's what I hear you saying.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition, it might be, that you've proven yourself. And so we might add additional leads. So there's a variety of different things that can be added. When it comes to the leadership team, however, I would say that we absolutely use the CV model, and that I can tell you in our leadership organization, everybody's compensation package looks different, Cody, because they all want very different things. And that motivational piece of the CV process is the best determinant of what people actually want. And so we absolutely tailor it to where they're going to get what they want, and they can stay in our world to do that. So I think for us, compensation when it comes on the agent level, and maybe the expansion leader leading that pod, all the way up to a regional director, that may be look one way, but when you're on the leadership team, it's very much tailored to make sure that you're getting everything, that you're on a path, that there's nothing to keep you from getting what you want. To give you an example, the fellow that runs our PC program in KCN, which is for agents at all levels, and that's every Wednesday. He also runs and coaches and consults my PC coaches in my market centers, where he can make additional revenue, et cetera, and even helping him outside of my market centers. So that's what I mean by, it's not just, they don't have to stay in a box. Gary doesn't make us stay in a box. I don't require them to stay in a box. It's like, what do they want to do? How can I help them get there?
Such a smart comment.
I'll tell you this, and you guys are going to think I'm nuts. So yes, I'm on a birthday vacation. And Denny said, you make things super complicated when you're explaining for instance, investments and things like that. And most people can't track you. And so I brought, kid you not, sitting right here next to me, MREI. I've almost reread it, because then he says, you have to be able to articulate some of this wealth building at a very different level. And so I'm reading it so that I can articulate it at all levels, not just where I'm at today. So I guess I said that to say that I think it's super important that as leaders, we're continually learning as well, so that there isn't anyone that can't join our organization and get where they want to go.
KC, Melissa asked, is your economic model the same in expansion as it is for your hub?
Great question. So I have two hubs, as you know, Cody. I have the expansion hub, which is in Scottsdale. I have my original hub, which is in Wasilla, Alaska. That's a 37-year, very, very mature database. So the compensation does look different there, because basically you walk in the door, the phone rings, come list me. That's a very different model than here's some leads, work these leads, and maybe after 6 months, they might turn into an appointment. Just very different. However, what I can say, and this is what's interesting, having done expansion now for several years, is now we have that same type of come list me in Arizona, because that was my next location. And so Arizona, and what I can tell you, and I knew it to be true as an agent when I started in this business, and it's absolutely true in expansion, you really touch the database consistently over a 3-year period of time, their SOI and maybe a geographic location they've chosen, you can mature that database really fast. It takes about 3 or 4 years. And that's what we're finding is in Alaska at our hub, 72% year to date of all of our business has come from past clients, sphere of influence, and referral. Well, guess what? In Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona, it's the exact same number. I kid you not. So the good news is, all the work that you're putting in the front end, if you are starting with new agents, can become a mature database very quickly. Also, you can take someone else's database and you can do what they always say they're going to do, but they never do. And that is, you really manage their database, and you can take the level of their productivity to an incredible new level. I'll give you an example, because everybody's like, why would somebody, we just signed a gal yesterday, and she's going to close 58 million this year. People always say, why in the world would they join you? Well, there's lots of reasons, but I'll give you an example of one guy, and I've known him for a long time because he was at Remax for 25 years. And as you know, Cody, I was at Remax for 25 years until you finally recruited me. And here's the thing, he was doing 8 to 10 million a year, Cody, and he was doing it every year all over again. So when he and I first started talking, now he's been in the business 33 years. Do you know where his database was, Cody?
I'm guessing not where it is now.
It was in 25 boxes in his garage. So
like literal boxes,
saying,
like we joke about it, like
boxes.
It was like paper in a box.
Could you not? Yes.
Like all of my old transactions for 7 years sitting in a box.
Yeah, 100%. So the first year after we started, database management for him and getting everything into our system, he went to 22 million. So he went from 8 million to 22 million. This year he's going to close over 40 million. So
Wow.
That's why somebody who you can tell that they're a match in terms of values, you can tell that they're a match in terms of work ethic, but they don't have the system to make the system work for them. And if you go help them do that, and you create also a wealth opportunity for them in terms of retirement, because let's face it, most 50-something-year-old agents don't have any retirement plan whatsoever, but you help them see a vision for that, and you can recruit some really awesome agents who know what they're doing, but they don't have the systems, and so they just recreate it every year all over again.
Oh, so well said. Kristan, thank you. I know you're on vacation. Thank you for taking some time. Can you drop any contact info in the chat box for anybody who had specific questions around what KCN offers, or how did you do this, or how did you do that? Can you drop that in for us?
Sure.
That would be incredible. Anything else that you haven't said that you needed to about compensation model?
Sorry, Cody, I muted myself.
Oh, no problem.
The only thing I would say is you're going to come across that one person that's as good as you. Not everyone is. Everyone can be great, but like Gary says, you're going to come across that one person that really is your twin. Meaning, they're better than you, honestly. And so when you think about compensation, and Gary just had, helped me work through this with someone in my organization, because he said, you can't do what he did for Mark Willis for everyone, but you can do it for a few, for those key people. And so what I would say is, all we did, and I did the same thing with my CEO who runs all my market centers, was start with the end in mind. Like, I'll give you an example. Cody, if I want to net $20 million, if that's what I want to be my net profit, I know right now I'm going to need 40 leaders, because I know what a mature location is going to produce in terms of income. Does that make sense? So start with the end in mind. What is it that you want? And then figure out, okay, so in order to have someone leading the organization so I can be on my 17-day vacay, what are you going to need to pay them so that they're all in and they're not going to leave it? And so begin with the end in mind. What is it that you want? And then if someone can help you get there, what are you willing to invest in them to make sure they're getting what they want? And like I said, Gary helped me through that, and he just said, you can't do it for everyone, but the few key people, you can do it for. And so begin with the end in mind is what I'd say.
Thank you so much. So well said. Last question. Where in the world are you?
I am in Turks and Caicos here. I'll turn on the video for 1 second. There we go.
Oh my gosh. Yep. Thank you.
I'm
for
in
sharing
Turks
it
and
with
Caicos
us.
on the beach. We just went parasailing.
Sounds terrible.
So,
suffering for the cause, I see.
I'm suffering for everyone.
Right. Well, tell Denny I said hi and I miss him.
I will, absolutely.
All right. I'll share real quick and Kristan, if you'll drop contact info in here, that's awesome. I'll share real quick what we do at United Home Group, my expansion business. And we all have different goals of who we're trying to be in business with or recruit. For me, this compensation model is for probably 95% of the people in our organization. And the majority of them are people that are selling. And again, my model is very specific to this for me, like everybody's is. I'm looking for people doing 5 or 10 transactions that want to grow to 20. Like that's what my model is truly designed for directly. And so what we do is we do a 50-50 dollar share. We don't ever call them splits. We always call them dollar shares. I said this at ESO a couple of weeks ago. One of the things we learned along the way is just words matter. And so instead of saying a split, we just say dollar share. And to me, it's kind of like, I don't want to split dinner with anybody, but I'm happy to share dinner. It just feels different. And I think it kind of frames the dialogue better. So we do 50-50. And then when they reach 8 million in closed volume, when they reach 8 million, we move them to a 75-25. So we give them a bump and they go to a 75% keep at 8 million in volume. And in the beginning, we did this based on unit count, but then after we crossed 30 or 40 locations, it wasn't equitable anymore. 30 or 40 units in Ohio didn't look like 30 or 40 units in LA. And so we went to a volume number. And I think that you heard that echoed by everybody saying, at some level, it's going to get big. And at some level, you have to figure out, how do I do this to where it's not complicated? We were complicating it for ourselves. So here's what we did. 75-25 at 8 million. When they cross 11 million in closed volume for an agent, they go to an 80-20. And they would stay on 80-20 until their year with us rolls over. Then they go back to 50-50. And so for our killers, really in most markets, if I've got someone doing, over 25 units, they're going to see an accelerated dollar share at some point. 25 units gets them to that 8 million in pretty much any market. LA or Southern California or San Diego, much faster, of course. But people get to choose where they want to live. I didn't tell them to live somewhere expensive or somewhere inexpensive. So they get to choose. Most of them, though, when they're 25 units or more, they're going to hit the 8 million mark regardless, and maybe even the 11 million mark in some areas. And for us, we don't go steeper than 80-20. And the reason that fits in the guardrail of a minimum of a 75-25 is that none of them would be anywhere near a 75-25 because they were at 50-50 for the first large chunk. So that still fits our guardrail really well. For most of them in my group that hit that 80-20 mark, when we actually look at it at the end of the year, their blended rate with us is like 70-30. By the time they do some at 50-50, some at 75-25, and then some at 80-20, our blended rate from start to finish is about a 70% to the agent and 30% to the organization. And so we're really okay with that. And that came from a conversation around everybody who's great wants to know what's next. Everybody who's great wants to know, where do I go from here? The last place anybody wants to be is where they were last year. And as teams, a lot of times we're like, cool, here's where you're at. And if you do really, really well, you could do it again next year. And if you're killing it next year, you could have another year at this. Nobody wants that. And so kind of like Bob, we've learned that, all right, for our killers, for our very best, like here's an accelerated program. Each of us as agents probably grew up through the ranks of real estate brokerages and market centers where we were like, hey, what's our deal? Like we do this much or we do this much, we should be treated differently. And then what we do is we use a regional director for leadership. So imagine there's 31 regions in Keller Williams. And so I'd have one person who's a sales manager / leader for that region. And I pay that regional director 10% of the company dollar. And so if that agent sends in $4,000 in company dollar, I'm going to send 10% to the regional director. And that comes directly out of my side. That doesn't come out of my partner's side. That's right off of mine. And then I have a 3% for our national director of sales, which that person today is Michael. And he's our director of sales and expansion for the country. 3% of every single dollar that comes into the company goes to him. And if you only had 20 people, that probably wouldn't be enough money unless they were really, really amazing agents. But as I grew and grew and grew, I was able to just move it to a 3% override or a 3% cut. It just had to be a whole bunch of people doing a whole bunch of business. And so where we started 10, 11 years ago, like I couldn't do that. If I would have paid that person 3%, they would have been starving all year. And so we paid more. And for a while we paid salary. And then for a while we kind of did salary plus a bonus in that role. And then it was finally big enough that we could just say, here's a percentage, grow it, you make more. Let it shrink, we fire your butt. I mean, let it shrink and you make less. And so that worked for us at that level. But size is what made that happen. But on the agent side, we do a really simple 50-50. Like some of the other people that you heard from, I've had my time where I paid more or less or shared more or less based on where the lead came from. In my world, we never got it to where we could track it very well. And every time somebody, like I never got it to where Bob's is at, where we had every single one tracked so well. Maybe we gave up on that too soon. I don't know. But every time somebody argued with us and said, no, this was my lead, and we said, no, it really came from here, you know how that conversation ended. I caved every time. Like every time it's like, I mean, at some level, I could argue and force you, but you're not happy the next day. And so every time I said, you know what, here. Sometimes we split the difference. Most of the time I just said, here, great, awesome. And so to make that simpler, I didn't want to argue. So we just went to a straight 50-50. And that's really when we brought in, okay, let's do an accelerated number. And the way that we justify it is we say, let's say up to your 8 million, some of those deals are going to come directly from you that we would have never touched. But we're going to help you transact them. We're going to help you do them. We're going to help take care of your database so you can do more of them. All those things, like everybody shared on their value prop. But some of those deals you're going to do that you never would have done because we put them in front of you. Let's use both of them to get you to a threshold of 8 million and not worry about where they necessarily came from. And the other part of that dialogue is when you're 4 years in or 5 years in, where did it come from? It might have been your list of 200 people that you brought in 5 years ago. But if you join as an agent, one of these amazing expansion businesses, and they help you stay in touch, they help you get in front of your database, they help you do it, where did it really come from 5 years later? It gets really gray to me. It gets really gray. And so for me, I didn't want to have to ever argue about it. If you can keep track of it, oh my gosh, I believe in the idea of different share levels based on origin of business. I think it's a great idea. I just wasn't ever great enough at tracking it. And so it became too hard for me. So we've gone 75 minutes. Is there anything in closing that you want to ask that one of these killers who has incredible expansion business could answer directly on compensation? Abby, you're not late, just wrong time zone, maybe. But you're never late.
Fair enough.
This was recorded. And so we'll send it out to everybody on here. And then we have another 200 that were registered that couldn't make it. We didn't want to put it off till after the first of the year. We wanted to go ahead and do it. To our friends on here, Bob and Eric and Jose and Kristan Cole, thank you so much. Thank you so much for always just being the type that goes, here's what I got. Here's what we do. Here's a copy of it. We all learned it from someone. We're all learning as we go. At the end of the day, I'm constantly reminded, as cool as KW gets with stuff, none of our stuff is cooler than our people. None of our stuff is cooler than the hearts that go, hey, we're just going to share it. We don't believe in a world that has a limited return. We believe in a world that if you grow, we grow. We just grow together. We're going to do this thing together. Like I've had Bob send me people and say, I don't know that they're a great fit for my group, but Cody, they might be a great fit for your group. That's happened with Libya. That's happened with Jose. It's happened with Kristan. Like this group just says, how do we win together? So I love that about who we are. Anything else you need, drop an email. I'm easy to find, codygibson@kw.com. To Eric and Bob and Kristan and Jose, thank you for always sharing. Have the very best Christmas this week.
You too. Thank you, Cody.
Bye, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cody.
Thanks, everybody.